The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
I would say there's a good chance that I might just throw you for a loop on this one. The opening topic is going to be about Tennessee's offensive linemen. What do you think of their recruiting to this point after, I don't know, some people say we've beaten up on the Vols a little bit in their offensive line recruiting. We shall discuss that. And also, you have a situation where somebody's trying to back out of a big-time LSU football game. Yes, the Trojans are trying to do so. That's dastardly. Jimmy Hyams joins us from SEC spring meetings. We always love that. We'll talk about reports that Joe Milton might not have had the best character while on campus, that he was kind of a party guy was the term used. I thought some of that reporting was unfair, to be real honest with you. A happy-go-lucky guy would have been fair. I don't think it affected his ability to play football, but we will discuss that. Also, potential roster caps could take away walk-ons. So the great stories of the Bill Bates of the world, the great walk-ons that ended up being fantastic players might be a thing of the past. They're going to have to, because they can't pay over 100 players. So they're going to have to figure something out. That's what they'll do, hopefully, at one of these SEC spring meetings that we'll get a live report from, thanks to our friends at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing, Dave?
I am well. It is time for today's tough question, in which it addresses a topic that you've kind of been, you've taken a beating a little bit. So today's tough question is right now, and it's brought to you by our good friend Medicare Mystic.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, here we go. You have to pick one of the two. You're optimistic or pessimistic about Tennessee's recruiting on the offensive line. Why? Because you've had some guys in the rearview mirror that have not panned out. You now have a gentleman who's a 5-star offensive lineman. I'll let you tell us more about him, who is calling Tennessee the leader. Plus, you have guys like Darnell Wright and players that you can look at who have developed. So, Caleb, let's go ahead and take a look first at the guys that they have developed. So before we say if we're optimistic or pessimistic, my question to you is, do you have to recruit as high of a level as other schools do to get great offensive line play? Because Tennessee has, you would agree, missed on some guys.
Yes, they have. And I do think their offensive line recruiting has been a concern. I also think it will become easier after this year. And here's why I say that. And this is what I talked about earlier in the week about how they're focused all in on 2024. Darnell Wright's already in the NFL. I think John Campbell Jr. is going to play himself into a maybe mid-round NFL draft pick, like 3rd, 4th round, something like that. Lance Hurd could be a star on the other side, and Nico Iamaleava is going to obviously make that offense look epic. Most importantly, Cooper Mason, Javonte Spraggins, and their downfield run blocking is going to keep Tennessee's rush offense efficient. You're going to see maybe 3 offensive linemen drafted from this team, plus an all-SEC caliber player in Lance Hurd. Combine that with Darnell Wright 2 years ago, I think you're going to start seeing offensive linemen look at Josh Heupel's offense and say, it's not as finesse as I thought. He can really turn me into a draft pick. And I think at that point, you might start to see, I think after 2024, offensive linemen may start taking the same discount that wide receivers and quarterbacks take to play for Josh Heupel.
Okay. I'm going to pick one guy in particular that I think changes the tenor of Tennessee's recruiting. It's today's tough question. Optimistic or pessimistic about Tennessee recruiting offensive linemen? Hey, we all love Nico, but that's where you win football games. Today's tough question brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Okay, Caleb, do me a favor. You tell me if there's a type of offensive lineman that I missed that has contributed to Tennessee over the past few years. That's a guy that Jeremy Pruitt recruited, a guy that Jeremy Pruitt assessed properly. He came in and played. So he was a Jeremy Pruitt holdover. The other type of guy has been, quite frankly, an overachiever. I'm not taking anything away from some of the linemen that are out there, but from what I've seen of the second string of offensive linemen behind the first five, they look like guys that are playing above their level. So this is why this conversation comes up today, guys, because Tennessee is wiggling into the David Sanders recruitment. Now, David Sanders, if you don't know, is a 5-star offensive tackle. He's an anywhere guy. We got anywhere, somewhere, nowhere guys. He can go anywhere he wants to. People believe he'll end up at Clemson at this point. He was a big Alabama guy, people thought, for the longest time, but obviously there have been changes there in their head coaching situation. Well, Tennessee got an official visit from him over the weekend, and he spoke highly at Tennessee. This is a guy, 6'6", we've talked about him, 6'6", 270, that I don't care if you're running the veer from back in the day, or you're running the triple option, or you're running the run and shoot, or you're running what Josh Heupel runs. He can play in any of these types of offense. This is the type of guy that changes you as a program, not allows you to get by with an offense that has some trickeration along the way that keeps defenses off balance. Caleb, this is the mauler type that you want to have in the SEC. I don't care how ingenious you are in creating an offensive game plan.
I agree. This David Sanders Jr. is the type of player you want to get, and it's the type of player. He's the type of player that, for all of my concerns with Josh Heupel evaluating linemen, there's not a lot of evaluation required for a guy like David Sanders Jr. Okay, guys, it's. I've said
before, Caleb, you and I could go to a camp. We could tell the 1-stars and we could tell the 5-stars. It's the 2 to 4 stars that we would not warrant a $250,000 salary as a recruiter. But yes, this is a 5-star. You and I could show up on campus, and my wife maybe is handling the driving because she's going to do the camera. And she goes, "That's a 5-star." She could say that.
Oh yes, I think like the top 30 recruits in football, our wives could look at them and be like, "Yeah, you know what? They could play anywhere." There's not a lot of evaluation required with a guy like.
But we don't want to make it weird. They're both happily married. Go ahead.
Wives? Yes, obviously. So basically,
my point is, he's only thinking Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, and now Tennessee has a visit in which he's spoken highly about the Vols. This is a guy that I'm not sure that they get in on before having a pedigree of a Darnell Wright, before having the pedigree of guys that they've been able to develop. I don't know that they have this. This recruiting foundation was laid the moment that Josh Heupel laid eyes on Darnell Wright and said, "I think he's going to be my left tackle to begin with, and then I think he's going to move to right tackle." And I thought it was so insane at the time, but he's done it. It's worked. It's somehow shown his versatility. And I believe that's a little bit playing on the left side has become overdone a little bit because you do like to keep you like to keep opposing defensive players outside of your field of vision when you're throwing the ball to your right. Would you agree with that? Do you think it's a little
Yeah, I think in
less?
Heupel's offense, the right tackle is more important than the left tackle. So I agree. The player development helps him land Sanders if he gets him. And now one of the concerns is Jerry Mack was recruiting him, and Jerry Mack is now is gone, but Glenn Ellerbe was also recruiting him. But you look at the other players that you look at the other schools in competition for him. Alabama, they're in flux with Kalen DeBoer. Clemson, we don't know how much longer Dabo Swinney's going to be there. He's not really happy about how he's treated in Clemson. Nebraska, I mean, there's so many questions with them with Matt Rule. Ohio State, I'm still of the mindset that Ryan Day is going to get fired at the end of this year. In South Carolina, I'm also the mindset that Shane Beamer is going to get fired at the end of this year. So it could come down to Tennessee and Georgia. And if you look at Heupel player development and you look at potential playing time and NIL money, you see Tennessee could end up being the more attractive place for a guy like Sanders. Now, you mentioned something earlier about recruiting offensive line. The problem to this point, and we have to be, I hate to negative Nancy this, but you said there's two types of linemen. There's overachievers and guys that Jeremy Pruitt recruited who have worked out. Dave, I'm not even calling those guys overachievers yet because literally nobody, zero people that Josh Heupel has signed has been a reliable out of high school. Let me be clear. Zero people that Josh Heupel has signed out of high school have been reliable blockers for Tennessee to this point. When they've been on the field, you might as well have had air at that position.
Now the third in that category would be transfers. And I think Tennessee is going to be in good shape there. I like Keurig more than you, but I think we both like Lance Hurd. So I think Tennessee will be in good shape there. That would be the third that you would look at as far as guys that have made that bounce. Brought to you in part by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. And when I look at this, the way these players have been able to develop, it reminds me how Glenn Ellerbe is the coach that just seems to fly under the radar for not only Tennessee, but the entire conference. Does he not? As far as he seems like he's in on a lot of the recruitments of these young men. He also is often cited as a player development, which speaks for itself just based off the players and what I've seen them develop in person. So he is one of the most underrated assistant coaches in the conference. And, the best part too, I mean, not for him necessarily, but for the best part for him or for Tennessee is I don't think he has any aspirations of being a head coach one day. So that's good news for Tennessee, right? Because they get to keep him in that position a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's good news for them with him as a player developer. And you're right. I think part of the reason he doesn't have aspirations to be a head coach, I'm not sure how much of a recruiter he is. Now, that is the drawback because that could be why Tennessee so far has missed in trying to evaluate people. Because, Dave, you know this. The type of coaches who want to be long-term assistants in college football, they want to be assistants because they don't like to recruit and all the things that come with being a head coach, right? With the work-life balance in college football.
Sure. For the most part, yes. I think if you could take recruiting off the plate of most coaches, 75% of them would say yes, right? There's the 25% who probably don't get along with some of their family members and they like being on the road and they like accumulating those travel points. I'm really not exaggerating or really trying
or
to
they like or they like cheating on their wives, and recruiting is an easy way to do it. Sorry.
No, I mean, there's some truth to that. I mean, when you've got an expense report card that you can spend as much as you want to, and you're already making a few $100,000 a year. That's not generational changing money, but it's enough to have a double life if you want to. That's a factor. But anyway, circle back. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
most assistant coaches would rather just be coaches and be given the kids because I do think they like developing them, which is different than in the NFL, right? but I don't think they like necessarily convincing them in the recruiting breakdown of it, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. They aren't that big on recruit. I mean, particularly a line coach. A line coach wants to develop players. Usually, they don't really want to focus that heavily on recruiting. I mean, Philip Fulmer, to his credit, that's probably where he was he was a rare breed, right? A line coach that really loved recruiting, that could also develop linemen.
Yes.
And that's not that common. For those who don't remember, Jim Chaney was an offensive line coach. Jim Chaney didn't like recruiting. That's why he was just a career offensive coordinator. Now, on the other side, defensive line coach is a little bit different. You're a little more intense. So Rodney Garner did like recruiting. But, you know, I think that could be very helpful, a line coach that could just focus on developing talent if you can get the right evaluators in there. And evaluating talent, particularly on the line, is tricky.
Nope.
So
it's tricky. And if you look at my goodness, doesn't it seem like with a quarterback or a receiver, some smaller school will slip in there and kind of battle a little bit? When you're talking about the top offensive lineman, does it not seem like you're talking about the Georgias, the Alabamas, the biggest schools in the nation, the ones that you want to hear why? I firmly believe this. Offensive linemen are the smartest as a whole position on the field, and they evaluate it like a business decision.
You think offensive linemen are the smartest players on the field?
Hands down.
More than quarterbacks? Well,
quarterback mostly, but there's only 2 of those on a team. You know, you've got 12 offensive linemen, and most of the time, a good 8 or 9 of them are pretty smart guys.
Well, you're right. There's a lot more. It's funny because people talk about, flipping offensive line, defensive line. It's so funny that the trenches, the type of player you're looking for is so different on either side of the ball. The defensive line, you need more freakish athleticism on the defensive line, right? Which is, yes. I would say defensive linemen are a lot easier to evaluate than offensive linemen.
The good old boy can only do so much on a defensive line, right?
Yes, those corn-fed tough guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah.
At some point, they're going to face a better athlete. They're going to go thump, and you're going to be done. And that's the end of your rushing the passer for that day.
Exactly. Offensive linemen can figure out leverage, where to force defensive linemen to help the quarterback step in the pocket, to create gaps for the running game. That's a lot. So, and this is why evaluating offensive linemen is so hard. You know this, Dave. You just said it. They have to use their heads a lot more. You can't evaluate that easily in high school. I mean, it's harder to evaluate that than it is quarterback a lot of times.
Fair. Okay, so let me ask you this. Tennessee's success on the football field is due to what more than anything else? If I put scheme, if I put existing talent or pre-existing talent, where else are you?
Oh, the message board. I don't want them to come at me for saying it's half of because of what Jeremy Pruitt did. But
it is. I mean, some of those guys, you have to give them. Okay, how about this? Just good old fashioned luck. How about that?
Oh my gosh, no.
Okay, so I would go. There's your poll question. Tennessee's success on the football field is based on scheme, pre-existing talent, just good old fashioned luck.
Love it. I want to know who's going to say it. People are going to say pre-existing talent, not realizing they're giving Jeremy Pruitt all the credit.
It's okay. No. See, that's what I actually look at other message boards, and I mean this for all you guys out there, Feed the Faith Outdoors, Kyle Beach, Elias, all you guys. And I mean this. You are such a smart audience. I can give this to you guys, and you have to give Jeremy Pruitt some credit if you say pre-existing talent, but that won't preclude you from doing so. No, we've got a good audience. We've got a smart audience. I'm happy.
I didn't say it's going to be our audience. Randos vote on YouTube polls a lot of time. Our audience is going to know.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, our audience knows. Trust me. We have great conversations with you guys. I would
now 100% say scheme to this point. Now I can go majority, maybe even lion's share scheme, but I'm having trouble going scheme Caleb, because some of these guys came in like a Hyatt, and I'm going back to 2022, like a Hooker under a different coach. So I can't go 100% scheme. I can't go.
Now
90.
you can give Josh Heupel credit for turning the players Jeremy Pruitt got into good players, because I don't think they would have made it where they were had Jeremy Pruitt still been there, even though Jeremy Pruitt identified them. We also have to give credit, because we're going back to O-line coaching and O-line recruiting. Glenn Ellerbe, I think his development of linemen is a big part of this. Again, this is so underrated about Josh Heupel's system. Everybody thinks it's a finesse offense. It doesn't work if the linemen, particularly the interior linemen, don't understand blocking schemes. That's a huge part of this.
But on the flip side, I think this is the first offense that I've covered that I would take the elite quarterback over 3 elite offensive linemen in a class. And I've never said that before in my life. Would you take 3? And by 3, I'm talking top 300 guys, not 3 top 10 guys. You know, I mean, I'm not, let's not be ridiculous. They're all strong 4-stars. There's a 5-star thrown in there. It's the best class Tennessee's ever had. One of the best classes in recruiting rankings. It's that incredible class. Or Nico. Given what Tennessee,
I'm taking Nico. Also because of again, a lot of it.
Okay, but would you have said that about any other offense that you've been around? Would you have said that? Because I wouldn't. Going back to 1996 when I covered my first practice, I would have said I'd rather have 3 great offensive linemen than that other guy who's throwing the ball out there. What's his name? Well, he says
like that is total bullshit.
Yeah, I would have taken 3 elite offensive linemen at the time over 1 great quarterback. Is that crazy and stupid?
You're right with any Tennessee offense. I think there are some offenses, though, where you would have, I mean, you know, a quarterback that an elite, accurate quarterback willing to get hit. Wouldn't you take that in Steve Spurrier's offense over an elite offensive line in the 90s? Because, again, the quarterback's going to get hit anyway. And as long as you have that extra receiver out there, nobody can cover him.
By the way,
that's hot.
My take earlier, Feed the Faith Outdoors said, so I'm going to do that. Okay.
Like, would you rather have
you're Josh Heupel?
Warfel?
You're Josh Heupel. Mm-hmm. When you're in your little, you got your lab and you're putting together this offense, and there's like bubbling going on. It sounds like 4 Downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. But anyway, so it's bubbling, and you're making this, and you're like, I only need one more thing for the perfect offense. But he's starting from the beginning, so it doesn't. Okay. I either need a Nico or I need 3 Darnell Wrights. Which would he take first?
I think you're absolutely taking Nico. I told you, Nico.
No!
I think Josh. You're taking Nico. You just said you would take the quarterback over the elite offensive lineman,
but not 3 first-round picks. I just went in a little bit more, and you just matched me on chips, and I'm a little disappointed that you did.
But no, I'm sorry. This day and age, I think you take because one, you don't need the first round picks aren't what make Heupel's offense go. It's the interior linemen who understand blocking schemes. Javonte Spraggins is not a first round pick, and Javonte Spraggins is the second most important lineman on this team, Dave, and he's not going to go as high as John Campbell Jr. or Lance Hurd in the NFL draft.
People are going to look at these repurposed, reportioned videos. They're going to like, what did Dave and Caleb do? Just argued with themselves. Pretty much that's what they did. I remind you, the show is represented by Banks and Jones. Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. And this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center. John Adams will be back on the program beginning on Tuesday. So each and every Tuesday. And he is brought to you by Newbert Collision Center, who also brings you this day in Tennessee sports history.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
This day in Tennessee sports history, what do you got? I remind people, please hit the like and subscribe button so you'll get this day in Tennessee sports history that we do each and every day live at 10 a.m. Eastern time. This day in Tennessee sports history is...
It's a happy birthday to Dave. I don't know how much you like this guy, but I know you covered him. And I'm just from an outsider, I was always a huge fan because I felt one of the hardest workers in Tennessee who really made something of himself that you didn't think he would as a recruit. And it is Turk McBride. And
good one. Yeah. Where was
Turk
from?
McBride was, I believe he was actually from Jersey, Camden. And he committed to Tennessee as a weak side defensive end, completely unrated. And he turned himself into his senior year, Dave, one of the best defensive tackles in the SEC, wasn't he, that year? And just...
Yeah, and don't 100% quote me on this, but he also would slide outside when they would go for a pure pass rush package. So he had the quickness to do a little bit more things to get their best pass rushers on the field. So I know he was considered one of those guys. I remember seeing him lined up on the outside. I remember seeing him lined up on the inside. Yeah, you'd start your team and take 3 Turk McBrides right now. You would.
And by the way, we talk about leaders and linemen and things like that. There's nobody that you want as a teammate more than Turk McBride, right? And as a hard worker and just you're right. He was able to be kind of that he could do the 3 technique or 5 technique, which wasn't as common during that time. And remember this, he was supposed to start alongside Justin Harrell that year. And then Justin Harrell, who I think would have been an NFL Pro Bowl, right, got hurt. And Turk McBride really had to carry that team after that on the defensive side at the front line.
All right, we're going down to Destin in just 2 minutes. It'll be Jimmy Hyams joining us. Nice enough to do that. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, it's brought to you by our good buddy at Ray Varner Ford.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Jimmy Hyams joins us now. His appearance is brought to you by Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Just an incredible selection there and great prices. You know you'll be treated fairly. Jimmy, let's go ahead and jump right into it. As I got a text from you, Greg Sankey visited with the media on Monday evening, I believe, and I'm completely off the screen. And now that you've had a day to settle in, one of the things that we wanted to talk about actually had to do with roster management. You were talking about Meshack and Key saying they don't want to be employees but want 1 year NIL deals. Well, I want a lot of things, Jimmy, but I don't get a lot of things. What's your take on what they had to say?
Well, hold on. Before Jimmy jumps in, let's just start this, guy, for clarity. We're talking about Tennessee basketball has filled out their roster, and Jemai Meshack and who was the other guy you said that said they don't want to be contract players, they want 1 year deals? We'll let Jimmy jump in on that.
Tamari Key. Yeah.
Who?
Tamari Key, Lady Vols basketball player.
Oh, Tamari Key.
Tamari Key.
Okay.
Lady Vols.
Okay, so they both right. So Jemai Meshack and Tamari Key both don't want to be employees. They want 1 year deal. So yeah, Jimmy, jump in. Give your thoughts on that. Sorry.
Yeah, so they were here. Both of them are here for a leadership conference. It's put on by the SEC. They've done that for several years. Tennessee's the only program that had 2 student athletes represented here. So they don't want to be employees. And as Meshack said, in which I thought they should have realized before, they don't want to get taxed on their scholarship. They don't want to get taxed on cost of attendance. They don't want to get taxed on, if you stay eligible, you get about $8,000 a year extra, which is one of the lawsuits that was out there. So they don't want to get taxed on that money. It makes sense. Now, as far as the NIL deal, they prefer a 1 year deal because they want to negotiate every year. To which I found this out later, and I did not know this. At least 33%, maybe as many as 50% of Tennessee's football players have multi-year NIL deals. I didn't know that. That came from a source. It surprised me that many of them. So that makes me think that you would have fewer people enter the transfer portal if they have a multi-year deal. Otherwise, there would be a penalty against them for leaving. So, but that was a conversation I had with them about those 2 topics that would affect the student athlete.
Yeah, and I'd heard about that as well with the tax end of it. So it's probably why I jumped ahead a little bit. And I want to be really clear on something, Jim, that I'm not recruiting for Tennessee here, but if you hear about a player that gets in trouble because of taxes, it's not because he wasn't informed. They have been informed. They have seminars to go to. Now, I don't know that smaller schools have that or that all schools have that, but Jimmy, I mean, they are well supported. You shouldn't have a tax issue if you're paying attention. That's what I've been told. As a matter of fact, I've seen pictures of the little tax seminars that they had. I mean, isn't there enough support there where they should be able to handle that?
Yeah, and they have classes at UT. Actually, they have classes on NIL, and you get credit for taking those classes. They tell you all about it, the rewards, the pitfalls, all the different angles that are there. And it's a class that they instituted a couple of years ago, which I was even told that Kennedy Chandler a couple of years ago attended and used some of the knowledge he learned there to help him in the next couple of years. So they are very well. Here's the other thing they could get taxed on their employees. They could get taxed on their scholarship. So if you go to Vanderbilt, you make the scholarship value is $75,000. You're going to get taxed. They don't want that. So now on the flip side of that, I talked to an administrator here that said the only way we're going to get to resolve some of these revenue sharing issues, NIL deals, and some of this is to have collective bargaining. And he said the only way you can have collective bargaining is for these student athletes to be employees. Now, I'm not 100% in agreement with that. I think they can be contract laborers and not be employees. So I do think there's a way to get around that, although I'm not a legal expert. But I did think it was interesting that an official at the SEC told me, if you want to go collective bargaining, they got to be employees. They don't want to be employees. So we're kind of at a difficult negotiating situation.
Caleb, I know you got something, but I'm going to jump in here and think back on those moments that I was taking calculus too, thinking I'm sure that this is going to help me out one day. And at least in this particular scenario, they don't want to pay taxes. I don't want Cooper to have to pay taxes of my money. But I will say this, at least you're learning something practical about life. I mean, you're learning maybe earlier than I did, but you're learning it. So good for you.
Yeah, Jimmy, and I want to real quick. Oh, sorry. Real quick, what was Tamari Key even doing down there? She's not even like at Tennessee anymore. She played her last game for the Lady Vols, didn't she?
She did. She was on the leadership council. And I think because of her experience, they wanted her back to share some of her knowledge. She was down here last year. You're right. She has completed her eligibility. And I guess, I don't know if she just master's or what. To be frank with you, I know that she's at least a fifth-year senior. She might have been a sixth-year senior because of the COVID year. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised she was here, but I didn't really explore as to why. Sorry.
Interesting. Okay. Changing gears a little bit. Scheduling was a topic, I believe, last time you were down there, and they kind of went with the Band-Aid sort of approach to fixing that. What do you think might happen with scheduling, and do you think that anything might happen this week? Is there a goal to hammer that out?
No, it will not be resolved this week. Greg Sankey said on Monday night that kind of on the back burner, that they will have very minimal discussions about scheduling. They're more in tune about trying to figure out the other obstacles in front of them, like revenue sharing, like roster management, those type things. So there's a lot of litigation out there that they've been discussing. Now, he did tackle the issue on the 8 versus 9 conference game schedule last night and shed a little bit more light on it than what we've heard. And what he said was, we want to see what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee does and their evaluation and their criteria of strength of schedule. He said, so if we find out that they penalize somebody because they're only playing 8 conference games versus 9, we need to be in tune to that. He also said that if you go to 9, he said that you could have a better inventory of games for your TV media partner. He said that you also would be able to play more rivalry games. If you stick to 8, you're going to miss on some rivalry type games. So he did shed light on that. But for them to watch and see what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is going to do versus an 8 or a 9 game schedule, I've not heard him say that. Now, here's my take on that. I don't think a conference should be automatically penalized if they play 8 conference games. And here's why. Look at Florida's conference schedule. They're playing Miami, they're playing Florida State, they're playing Central Florida in the nation. So why should they be penalized with an 8-game conference schedule? So I think it's a case-by-case.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Jimmy, we've lost your audio. Jimmy, we've lost your audio.
Yeah, your audio is breaking up just a little bit, Jim. See if we can get that back. Jimmy, you back with us?
You want me to reboot?
No, there you are.
No,
right
you're
there.
good.
You're perfect. You're perfect. This to me is interesting because I understand the point of roster limits because you're suddenly going to have to pay out these players maybe from the school. But I think one of the neat nostalgic aspects of college football, Jimmy, was the whole Rudy Rudiger, who was an absolutely terrible interview. You and I both know that from being on with him. But it was a really neat story that theoretically a guy could stand up in the student section and I'm going to go be a walk-on. Well, it sounds like that may go away altogether because they can't pay 500 walk-ons.
Josh Heupel on that issue yesterday, he said that he knows that the roster limitation is coming. The question is, how much? So, for example, a lot of schools in Tennessee, I think is included in this, have 120 people on their football roster. 35 of those are walk-ons. You're not going to see that anymore. I think the football coaches realize that, but I think they would at least like to have maybe 10 preferred walk-ons. So don't cap it at 85. Cap it at 95, 85 on scholarship, 10 preferred walk-ons. So at least you keep some walk-on program. And then a lot of, even with Chris Doring, the former Florida great receiver, he was a walk-on. He talked about what a special moment it was when Steve Spurrier gave him a scholarship and how his teammates rallied around him and cheered, and what a great moment it was. I think they're going to keep some walk-ons in football, but the days of having 120 on your roster, I think, are done.
But Caleb, can I jump in? One thing, if you make a limit, to me, that's limiting somebody's opportunity, which gets back to the whole argument that this flies in the face of the Constitution. See, and that is what they have lost repeatedly in Congress. So I get that all parties may come to the table, but I just wonder if one person can't stand up like Maurice Claret tried to do and say, no, that's not legal. Because it sounds like we're getting close to something, again, that doesn't feel legal to me.
Well, I think what we're looking at is why are they discussing this? It's a cost reduction situation. So when you do have walk-ons, you're still paying for them to eat at the training table and do these other things. They're still under your medical care. And if not for this revenue sharing and not for the fact they got to pay $0.7 billion in some back pay that goes back to 2016, they're trying to find out, how do we recoup some of the money that we're losing? The NCAA is cutting a certain percentage of dollars to these schools that they typically have distributed to them. So what do you do? Looking at, and this isn't just ball, they're looking at a lot of different sports. Now, it affects football more because football has more walk-ons than any other sport. The other sport that has the second most walk-ons typically is baseball. But in basketball, you have a couple of walk-ons. So what? Football, you got 35. Baseball, I don't know the exact number. It depends on how many scholarships you actually give, the scholarship money that you have. Now, in some instances, I think there will be some walk-ons and may get some NIL money, which is, as far as I know, legal. So we'll see where that goes. But this is all about the revenue sharing, the paying the $2.7 billion and trying to find some source of revenue. And while I'm mentioning that, I'll say this. Some people favor the 8-game SEC schedule versus 9, because to recoup some of that revenue, you play another home game against ETSU, MTSU, whatever, and that could generate $3 to $5 million over that weekend for your program. So that's another reason some favor going to 8, because they've got to find an additional revenue stream.
Yeah, it's a couple of quick things, Jimmy. Is the walk-on change, this isn't as colossal as it was in the 90s when you really started to see walk-on limits, because I mean there were already, I looked at history. That's kind of what people look at the downfall of Nebraska football. It wasn't them joining the Big 12 and they got limited on the number of walk-ons they could actually start to use because of Big 12 rules during that time. It's not as colossal as that type of change was in the 90s for walk-ons, is it?
I don't remember what the cut was in the 90s, Caleb. What was it?
Well, Nebraska, there was no limit when Nebraska was in the Big 8. So they had they went like 250 deep one year on their roster. And then they, when they joined the Big 12, they could only have 130 total players.
Yeah. And Jimmy, there was one other thing that I was going to throw out there. So Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I'll give you something. I'll give you something else that might kind of blow you away too. I know at Tennessee right now, there is a former coach, and I don't mind to tell you in between you and me, but that is trying to put together basically, I don't know, WFL, walk on for life, I guess, because he's trying to provide financial assistance for some of these guys that are borderline players. Seriously, one of them got on the field and you would know. And I've been told that he's likely not even really truly considered against the scholarship limitations. I mean, we could get into so many things about how do you legislate this. I don't even know how you would determine what a walk-on, a preferred walk-on, or a scholarship player is anymore if he's getting money from some former coach who still wants to be involved with the program.
I guess that's dicey, but the whole deal is instead of them saying scholarship, they just put a cap. You can have 95 football players on your roster, period, whether they're scholarship or walk-ons, or that number may be 85. They may just say that's the limit, and right now you can have 85 on scholarship, but it's not known yet what they're going to negotiate as far as those numbers. I will say this: I will be surprised if the football roster exceeds 95. Which theoretically is 85 on scholarship and 10 walk-ons. So I don't think it's going to go greater than that. I think some football coaches would accept that. Now, I did run into one person in the media that thinks that even 85 is way too many. He said, look at NFL rosters. They've got, 53 on the active roster and about 15 on the practice squad. But the huge difference is if you have a bunch of injuries in the NFL, you just go sign somebody off of a waiver wire. You go pick up somebody that it said they retired, and now you bring them back. You don't have that availability in college. If in college you have injuries to 5 wide receivers, how do you overcome that? Well, I guess maybe you move a defensive back to receiver, but it's a different ball game comparing the NFL to college. But I thought it was interesting that a media member thought that even having 85 was way too many for a college football roster.
Jimmy, before we let you out of here on this, I wanted to ask you a little bit about another thing that was brought up, because it's funny, you just brought up NFL. Sounds like the SEC is seriously considering requiring more detailed, thorough injury reports from rosters, right? Which Josh Heupel would certainly not like, because Josh Heupel employs more gamesmanship than any coach I've ever seen. How serious is that talk, and do you think that could harm a coach like Josh Heupel who tries to use gamesmanship?
It's very serious. And in fact, Missouri, by the way, issues an injury report on Thursday. And Eli Drinkwood said they will continue to do that. That's what the SEC says. The Big Ten issued injury reports last year. So, and Sankey's in favor of that. I could tell by his tenor by saying that there's so much gambling going on that we need to make sure that we protect our athletes. And that the college athlete, unlike the pro athlete can be more isolated because he's got a family when he goes back home to his wife, his kids, whatever. The college athlete has to go to, or he's supposed to go to class, and he's surrounded by people. He sees more people, and there are more people that could get to him about some gambling issue. So I think they're going to have the injury report. Sankey was asked, do you think you'll put one in place to implement this fall? And he said, look, I don't know. We'll see. He said, we'll do it when we're ready, but I don't know when we're going to be ready to do it. This is also something that the SEC is looking at it, but I know that the SEC would also like for it to be NCAA wide. And I don't know that it will get to that point. And also the injury report, as was mentioned by Sankey, would be focused on conference games only. You wouldn't necessarily have to do it if you're playing a non-conference game, because the opponent may not be releasing an injury report. So it would be a conference-wide and only conference games in which you would have to do this.
Because I'm sure that Vegas wouldn't be able to come up with a line, because they don't have any plans if the University of Tennessee were to play, I don't know, Southern California or UCLA. I'm sure they don't have any plans at the big-time football programs, right? Right, Jimmy?
Of course not. The one thing that I'm interested in, I hadn't heard much about, and I did ask Sankey about that's trying to have not allowing prop bets with college athletes. There have been 2 states that have banned that. There have been college athletes that have received death threats from people because they dropped a touchdown pass or because they missed a free throw and it cost somebody the line. So you got so many prop bets out there, and when these college athletes get subjected to that, as I mentioned, 2 states have banned prop betting for college athletes. Sankey said they're kind of looking at it, but he didn't. It's not a top priority for the SEC. At least it didn't sound like it right now.
Okay. Jimmy's appearance brought to you in part by our good friend Ray Varner Ford. He brings you Jimmy each and every Wednesday. I got something along those lines I want to throw at Jimmy right after this 15 seconds. Learn more about Ray Varner Ford.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Jimmy, I was pretty young when I worked with you. I'm sure I made mistakes. I would like to think of a person that considered myself, that I've kept my word of integrity. Got a 19-year-old son. I think he has integrity too. But both of us at that age, I could see how a prop bet would be confusing. Wait, my team still wins. I don't let any of my friends down. And I get to take my girlfriend out on a nice date and nobody got hurt. The prop bet thing is scary. I would argue that the SEC has a bigger fish to fry with gambling than it does even NIL. There are thousands of people that could be involved, Jimmy. I think that is super scary. I've never asked your thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. Well, that's what got Jonte Porter in trouble with the NBA. It's what got him banned from the NBA because he faked an injury or faked an illness and allowed somebody close to him to profit off of that. To how much money, I don't know. But that's the concern about getting into the college athletes. And there's no question that there are some gambling folks that they get to them. Maybe it's through another student, a runner, a friend, whatever. They're able to get to them. Maybe it's through a booster that's developed a relationship with the player. I think it is scary. And I think the SEC and other conferences should take a serious look at this. And I would be in favor of banning prop bets for college athletes, in particular, when you know they're getting death threats whenever one of their plays impacts the line and ticks off a bettor who loses the bet. So I think they should take that very seriously.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Jimmy, because you're right. Jonte Porter, he probably, whatever he allowed to be wagered is nowhere close to the generational wealth you can make playing in the NBA, which by far produces the most generational wealth for athletes of any sport. So if you're going to do that with the NBA, imagine what college football players, most of whom do not make generational NIL money, the vast majority of whom make enough money to buy themselves a few nice things maybe, and that's it. That's a much scarier situation with prop bets.
Yes, it is. You make a good point. I think that's correct. And so that's why I think they need to jump into this and right away. I think it's they talked about putting some items on the back burner, like whether to play 8 or 9 conference games. They should not put this on the back burner. This should be right up front. This should be something they should tackle now because there's legal sports betting, there's illegal sports betting, but the common thing is there is sports betting. There's a ton of sports betting going on, and the legal sports betting has made it so much easier for people, and nobody likes to lose a lot of bets, right? So they're going to take any kind of inside information they can get. I think it's a dangerous proposition. I think the SEC needs to address it right away.
Okay. I want everybody to take 3 seconds to think about this and realize that I haven't gone crazy. I don't think. Will we have gambling on commitments? Will we one day have this Nico Iamaleava is going to commit to Tennessee. I'm putting $20 down on that because I heard from a good source. Will we ever have that?
I'm surprised that Vegas didn't put money on that already. To answer your question, yes. Yeah, I think we will see that as well. And it's like, what can you not bet? Look at all these crazy bets you get from a Super Bowl, right? How long's the national anthem? Who's going to score the first touchdown? Who's going to drop a pass? They got all kind of crazy prop bets for a Super Bowl. And I realize that's a unique example, but yeah, I think it could mold into, is this guy going to commit? Heck, it may even, well, this would be harder. How many years is he going to stay at that school before he enters the portal? Now, you got to wait a long time to cash in on that one, so maybe they don't go in that direction. But, yeah, I could see betting on whether or not the player commits to a particular school.
I mean, let's turn to Caleb for a second because he does have a gambling problem. Caleb, what do you think?
I do not have a gambling problem. Yes, I think that's going to get out there, and I think that's going to happen very, very soon. And it is true. Someone mentioned it. You can bet on WWE outcomes, and it turns out there are people involved in the creative team in WWE that bet on the outcomes. They determine the outcomes, and then they get to go bet on the outcomes that they determined happening right now. So it's absolutely insane. And I want to make something clear because this goes to the Pete Rose thing in the 80s. When people are like, oh, well, he only bet on himself to win. Guys, if you're betting on yourself, it's as bad as throwing it because you're still skewing the lines and the odds when it comes to Vegas. So it still is as dangerous of a proposition, which is why baseball said, and which is why college football has to say, I don't care how you bet, who you bet on, or what your bet was. If you bet on the sport you're playing, lifetime ban. Period. End of story.
Yeah, and the thing that you're talking about with Pete Rose, so if he's betting on the Reds, maybe he uses a relief pitcher whose arm is worn out. And he probably shouldn't use him, but by golly, he's going to try to win that game because he's bet on it. So he impacts his roster management. He impacts who he plays. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think there's any excuse for it. And Pete Rose obviously bet on the Reds. He lied about bet on the Reds, and I didn't have a problem with him getting a lifetime ban.
Jimmy, other stories that you'll be working on and storylines that you'll be following that we can look forward to some coverage on that?
Well, we've touched on most of it. It's the roster management, it's revenue sharing, it's injury report, it's the SEC going from 8 to 9 games if they do that. Those are some of the things to look for. I did find one thing I did do was interviewing Danny White, and I had not talked to him about this before. I was talking to him about his theory in hiring coaches. I said, look, in looking at your history, you hire up and coming coaches, and you hire coaches in those sports where you could identify it that score points. You hire a football coach that can score points. You did it at Buffalo. You did it at Tennessee with Heupel. You bring in a basketball coach who likes to shoot 3-pointers and press. He said, yeah. He said, I hadn't really thought about it, but now that you mentioned this, I do hire up-and-coming coaches. I hire coaches that can score points because, you know why? I'm in marketing, and fans like to see points on the board. So, yes, I do that.
Okay. So,
and by the way, the success of the athletic department's unbelievable.
Yes. Now, he was joking, though. He's thought about he's the entertaining athletic director that goes up and down the court or field. It's like when Knox was named Knox Kiffin. I'm like, come on, Lane. Seriously? I mean, everybody knows it's because of Knox. I mean, come on. I told him. I said, Lane, come on. Everybody knows. Do you believe he was playing a little bit coy with you?
Oh, yeah. Not just a little. He knew. I just don't know that he's been asked about that. But it was almost like your hand's in the cookie jar. I didn't realize my hand was in that cookie jar. Yes, it was. So, yeah, I think he knew, and that's been his plan. And I mean, even go back to Buffalo with Nate Oates and Lance Leopold, he has hired coaches that know how to score points and play an exciting brand of basketball or football. Now, that's harder to quantify, like hiring a tennis coach or a track coach, right? But in the sports where you can have offense and score points, he is very much about leaning toward the offensive-minded coach that could put points on the board.
I will say this, though. He doesn't hire coaches that are married to that, because with Josh Heupel, we've all talked about how he does run the football. He does play an attacking style of defense. And look at the baseball team. I think the pitching may be the difference. So, Jimmy, I know you got to get out of here, buddy. I appreciate your time as always. We look forward to visiting with you next week, because there's more news that comes out of this than SEC Media Days, which is like a media convention. So, Jimmy, have a fantastic, safe trip, buddy.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all take care.
Appreciate you. Jimmy Hyams. His appearance brought to you in part by our good friend Ray Varner Ford.
Wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Now, I'm curious. I wanted to get into this with Jimmy, but I didn't have time. So, Caleb, let me jump into this with you. Do you think because there were some television times announced, and one of the things that I really like, and I'm curious if you do too, is now with television partners that are unique and not spread over multiple networks, you're going to get set television times for the most part, right? I mean, you may have some slight adjustments if one team were to tank out and one team was really surprisingly good, but for the most part, we're going to know who plays when. Do you like that? Because I think that's going to be one of the topics that we're going to see ongoing.
Yeah, I think now with almost every game on national TV anyway, it doesn't matter as much which one's prime time and which one's not. They're all going to maximize their viewing potential. And also, I mean, the SEC had this philosophy of 3:30 or 7 to try to get the best games on when it was CBS. The Big Ten is kind of proving noon football's fun to watch. Now, obviously, there are other constraints with this. There's time zone issues if you're the Big Ten. There's also weather issues. Let's call it what it is. Noon football in the Big Ten is great. Noon football in the SEC in September sucks. Okay, so like a noon game in Gainesville is miserable.
Yes, it's very true. All right, coming up, we'll talk scheduling. Also, some reports coming out about how Joe Milton led Tennessee's football team last year, and I'm not going to say anything about it because I just get fussed at and ripped for criticizing Joe Milton. So I'm going to let Caleb handle that one. It's going to be a handoff to Caleb and watch Caleb run to the end zone. There we go. Because stuff I've said before, but it's stuff that you need to know about, and you need to know that this team's closer to talent, championship talent than you think, and something held it up last year. And at times it was the guy taking snaps. That was an issue. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off Thug Sports.
Fifth year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now, saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Hit that like and subscribe button if you don't mind. Tell a friend. I'm blown away in the community. The people that say, I expect to get recognized some because I've been hacking away at this for quite some time. But people don't say, "Oh, you Dave Hooker." They say, "Oh, Off the Hook Sports." And that Caleb guy's crazy. No, they don't say that. Nobody said that once. They say he's a good-looking dude. You get that a lot. So how about that?
Oh, they say I'm good looking.
A good looking guy. They particular they like the slightly shorter hair in the front. The ladies like. That's what I hear. That's what people tell me. So you take that for what it's worth, but I think you look fantastic. I've said before, I'm very good at determining 1s and 5s in stars and prospects. I'm also good at telling you if a guy is a 1 or a 10, but anywhere in between, you got me. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
I mean, you wouldn't come to this channel to say, Dave, how are the Stanley Cup playoffs doing? And I can help you in other regards, but I don't know about that. Same for, hey, Bob, here's a picture. Is he a good-looking guy? I don't know. He may be. All right, let's change gears. And that is, we have a little bit of Joe Milton news that is not favorable. That does not surprise me. And I do not want to be the guy who is throwing him under the bus. So, Caleb, I would like for you to take over what has been reported, and of which said reporting I have done none.
Yes, guys. Dave is the anonymous AFC personnel executive that has been quoted here, just so you all know.
Distancing myself from this story. As a matter of fact, I was in Antigua, I believe, that week. I've never been to Antigua, but let's say I was.
Okay, so ahead of this is according to Boston Sports Journal's Greg Bedard. He recently spoke with an anonymous AFC
Never heard of a Bedard man.
Recently spoke with an anonymous AFC senior personnel executive about the pre-draft concerns surrounding Patriots selections last month.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest concern with Milton is that
before you tell me, let me work in an important read. Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. Follow them on Facebook. They had Zakai Ziegler in over the weekend. It was awesome. All right. What was said about Joe Milton by the Boston public?
Milton was noted as a, quote, good kid, but there were concerns pointed out about the fact that he is also a quote-unquote partier. There were questions about his maturity. And the quote, the executive said, quote, he was still on our board, but he was heavy maintenance, and the main thing was just like the pro approach. He's a partier, or at least he was earlier in his career. Confidence, mental toughness, and how he handled losing his job his second year, there were some concerns with that. And then the last part that's, to be fair, I want to be totally fair. The next part was, but by all accounts, he was a good kid, just immature. However, then they went on to add, it was a concern that he was immature at 24 years old. It wasn't like he was immature at 18 years old. And I think that is where people are raising some red flags.
So I never understood why people got so excited about Lee Corso making a pick, because your local media knows your team better than Lee Corso does or other ones. As a matter of fact, they ask, hey, what can you tell me about that guy or that guy? So I'm going to tell you what's true about that report and what's not. If you notice, Caleb, I didn't ask who that was because I don't want to know, because I'm going to tell you what's true and what's not. And I don't want to be put in a situation where that happens to be a friend of mine and I feel like I want to be a little bit nicer to him. So I'm not going to do that. So give me the first sentiment. I'll tell you what's true or not and whether or not we reported it a year ago.
The first part, he is a good kid, but a partier.
Okay.
That's crazy.
That's not true. Now partier by my definition. Partier by my definition is a guy who likes altered states, likes to be up till 3 or 4 in the morning. That to me is a partier. Is he a fun kid who, likes to have a good time? Yeah, let's throw this. Come on, chug it, go deep. Let's play. Let's throw it a little longer. That type of guy. Is that a partier, a light-hearted guy? Maybe in some definitions, but I would disagree with that. Next
So you would say he's a happy-go-lucky guy, not necessarily a partier.
Definitely, but to me, those are two different things. You tell me my son's happy-go-lucky, I'm like glad, good. He doesn't have a lot of stress right now in his life. You tell me he's a partier, I'm like, holy hell, we got a problem.
Right.
We're stopping now. Caleb, you've got the ship. Dave's driving to Massachusetts because we got a partier on our hands. You see how those are way different terms.
Right. Totally understand.
You'd be the same way. All right. Next sentiment.
Okay. So that he was heavy maintenance and the pro approach was a concern, and confidence and mental toughness were questions.
Hey now.
I think that's fair. I think a backup quarterback is heavy maintenance 9 times out of 10. And I think he probably was, especially the way he lost his job. So I think that's probably fair. Heavy maintenance, I was not specifically, that word was not used with me, but I'm willing to say that that's probably fair. What next? So I've defended him on one.
The few more, actually, you said something, because I was curious about this quote because I thought he handled it well, but how he handled losing his job his second year, there were some concerns with that. Now, I don't know if they mean his second year at Michigan, because he lost his job his first year at Tennessee, but I thought he handled losing his job at Tennessee very well, honestly.
To me, it reads like the second time, and
that's crazy.
That's unfair for them. As a matter of fact, I'll throw another. I don't know this person.
You suck, you jackass.
I don't see how you could handle it any better than staying there knowing you're probably not going to play, and you're what seems like an never-ending clock is ticking. You've only got 2 years left when he went in for his year behind Hooker. So he had 22, he had 23. Everything had to break right for him to be the starter in 2023. What other sentiment is out there? Because I'm kind of having a little bit of fun defending Joe Milton, because I think a lot of people have been very, very unfair to him. Give me the next one first. I'll tell you, Quality Tire Pro, the Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga in the community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com, or just tell them that Off the Hook Sports said, hey, Bo. We greatly appreciate that. Off the Hook's sending you to Quality Tire Pro. What's the next sentiment? And by the way, a new advertiser we want to announce here before the end of the program that we're very excited about. And let's just say that we won't stir fry the issue. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a restaurant. I don't know. All right. What's the next sentiment?
Okay. So the other part, and the final part, I think, is, but by all accounts, he was a good kid, just immature, but it was a concern because he was 24 years old and immature.
Hey now.
Yeah. It's a happy-go-lucky dude. I was a happy-go-lucky guy until I was, and I still am more so than most 50-year-olds, but, I think you and I both, probably by what we choose to do, are in and of itself, the moment should matter. It's not just the end. It's not to sound like everybody's favorite, but you should enjoy the process, right?
I agree. And so I guess basically what they're saying kind of makes me think, and it's funny. it's kind of the vibe I got. My favorite player that got me into sports was Ken Griffey Jr. in the 90s. And it's almost like the vibe they give him with this, right? Because Griffey always seemed like he didn't work that hard because he was just the kid and having fun playing the game. You know what I mean? And that's the way they seem to be describing Joe Milton, and they describe it like it's a problem. So long story short, we know about the accuracy
I will
issues.
tell you, too, though, he did not give off that vibe in person. The one time I interviewed him, he was all business. His son was in a
Griffey?
football. Yes. His son was in a football game. You were not around. That whole kid thing, I don't know if he's mad because his career was beset by injuries, but he was a different
Yeah, he
dude
got a little
person.
bitter in the 2000s.
Yeah. And who would blame him? He would have gone down as being the second Willie Mays.
Well, also, when you're considered a flop, when everybody surpassing you is doing roids and you're not. And so, yeah. So the one thing I would say with Milton, so is it fair to say we agree that his questions about his accuracy are fair? Questions about his ability to process quickly are fair. Can we safely say that this anonymous report is Bush League and out of bounds because it's so blatantly not true?
I thought it was completely unfair. I saw it, and I was actually just going to let it go. And trust me, that's the type of thing that's an instant segment for us. So I should have been like, oh, let's get this one. And I sent it to Caleb, and he didn't have the subscription, which might have been good. But I'm glad we did it because I wanted to put it to bed right now. Would you have a championship program if your baseline was Joe Milton as a quarterback? And the answer is yes, you would. If Josh Heupel had a chance to work with him from 17 and a half to 18 years old, he would have anticipated better. He would have done an incredible job with Joe Milton. There's no doubt in my mind. Got to him a little bit late. I don't think he's a great anticipator, never will be. But the quarterback he always reminded me of was Brett Favre. He actually has enough physical ability where he could overcome being a great anticipator because he's not that. Favre wasn't either. Caleb, I think he has
Favre
that.
wasn't Favre did anticipate a lot of things. Well, he also anticipated a Jets cheerleader being interested in him if he just sent him a very inappropriate pic. He actually thought that was going to work.
He didn't anticipate that you could save those pictures.
I mean, now he anticipated where to steal welfare money from in the low character sleazeball POS that he is, stealing money from poor kids in Mississippi to build a volleyball
Elias
stadium.
is right. I think he improved a lot, and he did improve a lot, and they improved a lot with how to. Somebody told me this, okay, that I met with, and this guy has played more quarterback than you can ever imagine. But he said, you know what Joe Milton doesn't, this will blow your mind, Caleb. He said, you know what Joe Milton doesn't get enough credit for? Not throwing it over the middle. Said everybody says that they would throw the wide screens, and they would. But there were times where Joe Milton didn't throw it over the middle because he knew he would throw it hot and it would be in danger because you're 10 times more likely to get a tip ball over the middle intercepted than not. All right. So anyway, that's my defense of Joe Milton. If you could have him for the rest of your coaching career, most coaches, 99.9% would take that, except for maybe a David Cutcliffe, a Jeff Tedford, and maybe a Josh Heupel. All right. LSU, USC looks like it's not going to happen. What's the deal with scheduling?
Well, it's going to happen, but USC has tried to get out of it. And actually, Saturday Down South, to their credit, broke this. Their sources were the ones who said it. They got these sources. They broke this from Florida. So I believe they broke this during the SEC spring meetings, and they got leaks from that there. USC has been spending 2 years trying to find a way out of a contract to play LSU in Vegas because Lincoln Riley didn't want the game. This is according to multiple sources, and they have not been able to get out of it. Fox Sports even got involved and tried to further the process because they don't want, and this is where this all comes from. It sounds like the Big Ten is behind it because they don't want USC's first game as a Big Ten member to be broadcast by ABC ESPN, which is the SEC's flagship network now. So this is a big
point. I can see the point. Is that a petty point? I see the point.
That's a petty point. That is a petty point. But USC, it sounds like Lincoln Riley himself has been wanting to get out of this game too for 2 years.
See, I was asking you. I don't think it's petty. I want my debut against the biggest team to be on my network and preferably team to team. Like this thing moved so incredibly quick. There wasn't a time to move up like an Iron Bowl first game of the year. Wouldn't that have been cool? Like a kickoff classic Iron Bowl or something like that. A kickoff classic Tennessee Alabama game, a kickoff classic Michigan Ohio State game. I mean, those things would have been super cool. And we entered this new phase of football. But no, we don't do that. We just stumble into it and hope that everything works out. That's the way college football works, right?
Yes, exactly. More than any other sport. And this game, for the record, is in Vegas. So that may not be petty from the Big Ten. I get it. But I think, honestly, I don't know if it's from the Big Ten or Fox Sports. Now, and this game is at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. So it's even closer to a home game for USC. Now, here's my question. SEC fans are going to be all over, oh my God, they're scared of the SEC. Everybody's scared of the SEC. And maybe that's true.
That's crazy.
But is USC really wrong for wanting to back out of this?
No, because they're being told by their new boss, the Big Ten, that this isn't. What's their first Big Ten game? Can you?
No, Lincoln Riley wanted out of this before even. On top of it, though, Lincoln Riley himself at USC wants out of it. He doesn't want to play this game.
Okay, well, that's soft. But Lincoln Riley's always been soft, so we didn't learn anything then. But if your boss tells you to do it, then it's time to buck up and act soft.
I
don't
think it's soft. I think USC is smart. And the reason I think USC is smart, and everybody's forgetting this, Jimmy brought this up on the segment about the SEC scheduling. Guys, the Big Ten, you play 9 conference games. You only play 8 with the SEC.
No.
I'm sorry, but if you're playing 9 versus 8, you don't want to play that extra SEC. Why play that extra SEC game?
Nope. Agree with Peyton and hit that like and subscribe button.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
You cannot start backing out of games. That is soft. You don't back out of games. You gave them your word. Your word means something. You cannot back out of games, Caleb. It makes you look soft.
Okay, so was Tennessee soft when they canceled the Army game a couple years ago?
Yes.
I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant.
Very, very soft.
It was brilliant. No, you canceled that game.
You know what that was? You know what that was? Because I always buy a drink or sometimes a meal if I see somebody that's served. And because I know that I'm not tough enough, so they are. So to compare to them, I'm soft. So I say, may I buy you a drink? Here's the equivalent of what you're talking about. If they say, yeah, I'm having a bourbon and Coke. I'm having the Maker's Mark. It's $12.50, and then they pour a little of the Coke in there. And I say, no, I'm sorry. I think you just need to have a Coke. So because I'm soft and I'm only going to pay for that $2 drink, I'm not going to pay for a $12 drink. That's soft to back out of there. I gave somebody an agreement. I offered to buy him a drink. That's the drink he ordered. I have to buy him that drink. I have to show up on that football field and play that game against Army.
No, you have a grueling SEC schedule, and you have to then go play a team that runs the triple option that you have to completely change your preparation for right before you play Florida. No. And I know it wasn't soft because in 2006, the worst decision scheduling-wise Tennessee ever made was to play Air Force right after Cal and right before Florida. And Dave, you remember that game. You covered it. That was the scary Inky Johnson injury game. Okay?
A little bit more scary.
Yes, exactly. Inky Johnson's career was ruined, and he almost died because of that game. And Justin Harrell went down for the year. If Tennessee doesn't play Air Force that year, guys, they're probably playing for the national title because they beat Florida.
And I would have covered the Alabama game that year, but I was suspended.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yes. Inky Johnson has generational NFL money if they don't play that game. Justin Harrell is probably a Pro Bowler in the NFL because his career wasn't ruined by an injury. I mean,
you're picking one game, Caleb. If you lost,
that ruined Tennessee. Yes, but because they ran the triple option and you sandwich it between 2 top 10 opponents in Cal and Florida. No, and that was ridiculously
Here's
stupid.
my rule on scheduling. This is really easy. Okay. First of all, The SEC is easy enough. If you want to schedule all patsies, you have the right. They have 9 opponents now, right? Correct?
No, the SEC's still stuck at 8. Big Ten has 9 opponents.
So they're at 8 or 9. You have the right for the rest of them to be patsies. This is my philosophy. It doesn't have to be yours, because I do want to hear yours. You have the right to fill that out with patsies. That's fine.
If you schedule one tough game?
I like it, but I'm not going to be mad at my AD if he doesn't do it. Does that make sense?
Then USC has the right to back out of the LSU game to fill it with a patsy.
Okay, right. I don't have a problem with that. But you've given your word. You'll be there. I've given you my word on things, and you've given me your word on things. And you and I know we can trust each other. And I know that I can, and people know that they can trust to get their prizes. There are a lot of things that depend on trust. And saying you're not going to go play them is embarrassing for USC, and they're soft.
This isn't okay. There's a couple of types of trust, though. There is a trust of like, yeah, our trust is like based on our futures and our careers and really pouring our heart into this business. This is playing a football game. USC and LSU will both be fine if they don't play this game. Okay, and the only thing that's standing out to me is LSU. Does USC think LSU is that much better? I don't think they do. I think it's more just they don't want to play 9 Big Ten games plus LSU. And also, you got to remember this: USC has to play Notre Dame. So USC only gets one non-Power 5 school this year, and that's Utah State. Maybe they shouldn't be backing out on their word, but I can't call them soft because they're playing every week. They have a Power 5 opponent basically. And so, look, I'm one of those. I think when it was the old model where you had 8 conference games and 4 non-conference games, I was fine with my philosophy was to schedule one tough game, schedule one FCS team that you can beat up by 60 and they can get their little paycheck. You know what I mean? Just to put up video game scores, and then schedule 2 group of 5 teams. I just don't think this is a big problem, USC wanting to back out of this, because they made this decision before they knew they were going to the Big Ten.
I agree with that. But the decision was made. Contracts were signed. Hands were shook. That, to me, means you should be in the game. Period. I mean, if you're not in the game, then what's the point of even making these plans? I mean, I think these plans... Now, the last half, I will say this. There are only 2 types of... You can, if you want to, sign one premier opponent. But don't joke around with me and tell me that it is North Carolina State. That, to me, is a stupid opponent. They could slip up and beat you, and what do you gain out of them? Does that opponent make any sense to you?
No, I agree. That was a beyond stupid opponent. It reminds me the stupidest one I ever remember that Tennessee did with that, outside of Air Force, which I'll never forgive for the stupidity of Air Force, was, remember when they scheduled Marshall, Dave? And Marshall had a really good program, and Tennessee got locked in a shootout with them.
Yeah, and that was the first game that I ever picked for the Knoxville News Sentinel sports page, or Knoxville News Sentinel sports page. The inside, we had a pick of everybody. And of all the media members in the entire market, I was the only person that picked Marshall. And if Stan Hill hadn't rolled his ankle at quarterback, Marshall wins that game and wins it easy.
You're right.
Third quarter. Look it up.
I remember. I watched that game. I remember because there was a certain defensive coordinator at Tennessee who, for whatever reason, could not figure out advanced offenses during that time.
So I think to combine, if we had an official off the hook sports stance, it would be 3 total patsies. Now I'm okay. You're not going to like this part. I'm okay with the armed forces because I want to give back. And I'm okay. But other than that, I want it to be in state. I want to get back to ETSU. I want to get back to all of those schools. Are you cool? Are you jiving with that? Or do you not want to play an armed forces school because they could do something?
I would never in a million years play an armed forces school. And you can accuse me of not being patriotic all day. Okay. I don't care. I think yes. they defend us overseas, but they injure our football players in America.
I understand. I understand. I feel about that. I feel a little bit differently about that. So those would be my rules. And once you make a promise to play somebody could get excited about that. You don't want to give that away. I mean, at least I don't want to give that away. I don't see any point in that. I remind you that 4 Downs is brought to you by our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Stop by there in Athens and just say, hey, I would like a free Celebrate 98 shirt, or I would like a free Off the Hook Sports t-shirt, and they will hook you up. Plus, we want to get you registered for a big prize we've got coming up. So stop by in the showroom in Athens, and they'll deliver everything to you, plus a free Celebrate 98 shirt. See it right there? I think I can point to it backwards. No, there it is. Yeah, there you go. Or an Off the Hook Sports t-shirt. 1 minute. We're back. Stay tuned. The best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com. Tennessee in the regional, Northern Kentucky and Indiana, along with a Southern Miss. So none of those teams should blow you away. Why? Because Northern Kentucky's 35-22, Indiana 32-24-1, Southern Miss 41-18. Of course, the Diamond Vols, the overall seed in the tournament after winning the SEC tournament. And that was a very strange tournament. Before we get into a preview of these teams, I thought on Thursday that Tennessee was ready for that thing to be over, and then they just hang in it. And at some point they decided they wanted to win it.
I think Tennessee in that tournament took the exact same approach Rick Barnes had in the SEC basketball tournament, which was, we're not going to throw this on purpose, but we're going to have a strategy that involves us exerting as little energy as possible. And they did that, but they actually happened to win the tournament while exerting as little energy as possible, which was really, really, really funny. And
it was. And it shows you how good their pitching is and how deep their pitching is. So that leads me into my next point. I'm not at all concerned about a basketball team having dead legs like I would a baseball team with weak pitching arms, because they don't have 3 or 4 good pitchers. They've got about 6 or 7 or 8 that can log some innings in a College World Series type of scenario.
Right, exactly. And I think they would I think they don't have to log that many innings to get out of this regional. So which is really, really, really good news for them as the number 1 overall seed, because they have some experience with the teams we're playing. As we remember, they did beat Southern Miss last year in the Super Regional. Southern Miss has a new head coach this year. That would probably be their toughest out. But Indiana, I know Indiana's technically Power 5, but and Northern Kentucky, I don't think is any threat. But I think Southern Miss is the one that could actually cause them the most trouble in this regional. But you're right, they go so deep at pitching. I think they hope they won't have to utilize that. I think they hope their lineup gets them out of this weekend.
Ask you this, after watching this team and what they're able to do almost by default, how deep do you think that this team can go? Portions of the program brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. Also remind you, the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a great variety, wide selection, strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. It's Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, or use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. So when I look at this baseball team, I'm not worried that they had to use a little bit more arms than they thought they might. I'm curious what you think by people you talk to, fans of this baseball team that have been teased so many times. And there was a big tease when I was in college there with a guy named Todd Helton, who was pretty darn good. And I say tease in that I really thought that year they were a team of destiny. I really think, and I haven't said it yet because I don't want to jinx them, I feel the same way about this for a different reason. I thought that team was super scrappy. I feel like this team is super pitchy, which that's not a real word. I'm aware. But I think this team feels like a team of destiny to me.
I agree. And I think they haven't put the same, you were right, they haven't put the same mental pressure on themselves as they did 2 years ago with the way they rubbed everybody's face and everything. I think they knew how to fall back a little bit. I think that I think they can win it all, and I think they should win it all. And I think they should be very disappointed if they don't win it all. Now, again, this is the baseball tournament. It is the flukiest tournament, flukiest postseason in all of postseasons. Okay, it's absolutely why I hate expanded postseasons in most sports. And y'all are gonna make me sound, y'all are accusing me of hating America on the message boards, which I don't. I love America, but one of my biggest issues with America is the love for expanded postseasons in every sport because I think it ruins the sport. The college baseball tournament is the worst example of that. Okay, so it is the absolute worst example. Flip a coin. It's the worst way to crown a championship in any sport. It's insane.
But
and
by
the way, it's also, y'all say I'm a communist. It's the most communist way to crown a champion in any sport.
But that being said, you'd rather be great at pitching. Just like you could say the NCAA basketball tournament, there's a lot of luck there. But I'd rather say that as a great three-point shooting team, right?
Oh, yes. The pitching is more important. And great pitching that
Tennessee plays on Friday, by the way. Question on the message board. Go ahead.
Yeah, great pitching that can really step it up in the postseason because there is a science to pitching more than there is hitting. Hitting is so much based in luck, but pitching, there is more of a skill-based factor in it. And so you're right. You would rather have that in the postseason, particularly when a lot of teams, as you know, Dave, tighten up. This is more common in the majors, but they tighten up. They try to play a lot of small ball, so you can really kind of catch teams that are doing that. And I think that's the pitching and pitching depth is very important. And Tennessee does have pitching depth, but I'm just saying it is a terrible tournament. It is literally like there is no meritocracy to winning the NCAA baseball tournament.
No, I feel like the best team goes home early more times than not. Okay, taking a look at the opponents that'll be in Knoxville, the Northern Kentucky Norse. Is it Norse or Norse? Earned a trip to Knoxville after winning their first ever Horizon League championship. They beat Youngstown State 23-5 on Saturday. MVP outfielder Traven Moss, who racked up a career high 5 RBIs at both Fridays and Saturdays games. We want to thank Stacey Oliver for just knocking it out of the park in terms of recruiting. Of baseball coverage. So that's all there on offthehooksports.com. It'll be the second NCAA baseball regional appearance for the Indiana Hoosiers in the last 2 years, and will be they'll open against Southern Miss on Friday. The Hoosiers were knocked out of last year's NCAA tournament by the Kentucky Wildcats and have not been to a super regional since 2013. So Tennessee gets what it should as one of the highest rated teams in the tournament, Caleb. They get a very favorable draw.
They do. And Northern Kentucky has the coach with the greatest name in the entire tournament. You ready for his name?
Dave Hooker.
No, Dizzy Payton.
I saw
Dizzy
a lot
is
of
his first name.
When I was in college, I saw a lot of Dizzy Payton.
You didn't. His forehead was just so big, he looked dizzy.
Ouch. So much for hitting Payton on the show. Have a fantastic day, everyone. I do want to announce a brand new advertiser on the program that we are super excited about. I want to go ahead and share this. I'm going to tell you more about what we're going to be doing with them. And let me pull that up right now. There we go. It is our good friends at Asia Cafe. So those of you in the Knoxville area, you're going to know that I can absolutely hook you up with gift certificates. That'll be part of our Patreon page. If you don't mind, going ahead and pulling up the Patreon page, we'll be giving away weekly prizes to a lot of restaurants, including me sharing this screen, which I'm able to do.
I'm in trouble.
No. I'm good. I feel confident in myself. I believe in myself. All right. There we go. So that's our friends at Asia Cafe. And if you haven't been to Asia Cafe yet, they're on Calhoun, but they have 5 other express locations. They're all there. If you can put that in the message board, I'd appreciate that, because they have not only do they have Mandarin, as you had mentioned, they also have the Chinese, the Japanese, the bocce. They've got it all at Mandarin at Asia Cafe. So certainly check them out. We appreciate them. We're glad they're a part of the program. And my dinner last night was fantastic, Philip. All right, for everyone, I'm Dave Hooker. Caleb, let's bring you back up. I can't have you off the screen.
Okay, sorry. I'm pulling myself up now. Just want to point out, guys, because everybody's calling me a commie now on the message boards, and it's just crazy. Why do y'all think I love LSU so much? The impact Huey Long had on LSU's football program.
I don't think you're a commie at all. You made reference to that. By the way, join the Patreon page, and you can win a gift certificate to Asia Cafe. You can also win this, which is really, really cool. And increased recruiting information there. And also, how about that? A Tony Vitello autographed baseball. So we're going to give that away a week from Friday. So just make sure you're signed up. It's just $9.98. So you'll get increased recruiting coverage. You'll also get prizes aplenty. We'll take care of you. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of, let's bring you back up one more time.